The holographic display cast an ethereal blue glow across the ornate command chamber of the Zarkak's flagship, Eternal Dominion. Supreme Commander Vexthor's scaled fingers traced the outline of Earth's defensive fleet, his lipless mouth curling into what passed for a smile among his species. Behind him, the gathered admirals and generals of the Dominion's War Council watched in silence, their ceremonial armor gleaming in the artificial light. This is what the humans consider a defense fleet. Vexthor's voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of military conquest. Their largest vessel is barely the size of our scout ships. Dr. Amanda Reynolds shifted uncomfortably in her environmental suit, the only human permitted within the Dominion's inner circle. As Earth's leading xenoanthropologist, she had spent the last 5 years studying the Zarkaks, earning a position that any other scientist would envy. Now, watching the Supreme Commander dismiss humanity's capabilities, she felt her stomach twist into knots. Supreme Commander, she stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I strongly advise against underestimating Earth's defensive capabilities. Our historical records show. Historical records? Vexthor cut her off with a dismissive wave. Your species barely managed to reach your own moon before we found you. The Dominion was conquering solar systems while your ancestors were discovering electricity. The War Council chamber erupted in chittering laughter, the sound like metal scraping against stone. Dr. Reynolds clenched her fists inside her suit's gloves, knowing that her next words could either save lives or end her career. With respect, Supreme Commander, humanity's technological progression has been exponential, not linear. In the last decade alone. Enough. Vexthor's tail lashed against the polished floor. You forget your place, human. You are here to observe and advise on cultural matters, not military strategy. The holographic display shifted, showing detailed scans of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Admiral Kexty, her immediate superior and one of the few Zarkaks who actually listened to her analysis, stepped forward. My lord, Dr. Reynolds' concerns aren't entirely without merit. Our long-range scans have detected unusual energy signatures from several of their installations, particularly around their inner planets. Vexthor expanded the hologram, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied the data. Primitive nuclear reactors, nothing more. Their weapons are equally obsolete. Ballistic missiles, chemical propellants, and crude energy weapons that wouldn't scratch our smallest vessel's shields. Dr. Reynolds watched as the Supreme Commander manipulated the display, highlighting Earth's apparently modest fleet. She thought of the classified briefings she'd attended back on Earth, the projects hidden beneath the surface of Mercury, the true capabilities of what the public called defensive platforms. If only she could make them understand. The Council will vote, Vexthor announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. Shall we add Earth to our collection of protectorate worlds? One by one, the Council members activated their voting crystals. Green lights filled the chamber, unanimous approval. Dr. Reynolds felt her heart sink as Vexthor's aide began drafting the official declaration of conquest. Supreme Commander, she made one final attempt. At least allow me to present my full analysis. There are patterns in human warfare that. Your concern for your species is noted, Dr. Reynolds. Vexthor's voice carried a patronizing tone that made her blood boil. But this is hardly our first conquest. The Dominion has absorbed 300 star systems, some far more advanced than Earth. Your ships are insignificant, your defenses primitive, and your technology laughable. He turned to address the Council, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human scientist. Send the preliminary fleet. 20 ships should be more than sufficient to demonstrate our power and convince Earth to surrender. After all, his eyes fixed on Reynolds with what could only be described as smug superiority. We wouldn't want to waste our full military might on such an insignificant target. As the Council chamber emptied, Dr. Reynolds remained behind, staring at the holographic image of Earth's fleet. She thought of the classified files, the hidden preparations, and the true nature of those primitive ships. A small smile crossed her face, hidden behind her suit's faceplate. No, She whispered to herself, "We wouldn't want you to waste your full military might." Not yet. Deep within the archives section of the Eternal Dominion, Dr. Amanda Reynolds' fingers flew across the alien interface, her environmental suit's adaptive systems translating the Zarkak's data streams into comprehensible formats. The classified footage she'd discovered had kept her awake for 3 straight cycles, her mind racing with implications that the Dominion's leadership seemed determined to ignore. A holographic display showed Earth Special Forces during a classified operation against a pirate stronghold in the asteroid belt. The human soldiers moved with impossible precision, their movements defying what the Zarkaks understood about reaction times and neural processing. Their supposedly primitive combat suits allowed maneuvers that should have turned their occupants into organic paste. "Computer, replay sequence Delta 7, she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. The footage shifted, showing a human frigate executing a combat maneuver that violated 3 different laws of physics, at least according to standard Zarkak's scientific doctrine. "Found something interesting, Doctor." Reynolds spun around to find Admiral Kexty standing in the doorway, his ceremonial armor replaced by the simpler garb of off-duty hours. The Admiral's secondary eyes focused on the display while his primary pair studied her reaction. "Admiral, I was just reviewing some tactical data." She straightened up, trying to project confidence despite her exhaustion. "There are patterns here that the War Council needs to see." Kexty moved closer, his scaled head tilting as he watched the footage. "These maneuvers, they shouldn't be possible for organic pilots." "Exactly." Reynolds pulled up additional files. "And look at their ship designs. Everyone assumes they're simple because they're small, but notice how the hull configurations change between encounters. They're showing us exactly what they want us to see." The Admiral's tail twitched, a sign of genuine concern among his species. "You believe they're concealing their true capabilities." "I know they are." Reynolds activated her personal data tablet. "I've cross-referenced every recorded encounter with human vessels. Their technology doesn't follow any normal progression curve. They're deliberately presenting an incomplete picture." She brought up a detailed analysis she'd spent weeks preparing. Humanity fought itself for millennia before reaching space. They mastered the art of deception, of appearing weak when they're strong. In their own history, they call it sandbagging, deliberately underperforming to mislead an opponent. Kexty's scales shifted colors slightly, the equivalent of a human raising their eyebrows. "You're suggesting this is a deliberate strategic deception." "At a planetary scale. I'm certain of it." Reynolds displayed more footage. "Look at their orbital platforms, the energy signatures we detected. They're not random fluctuations. They're testing weapons systems, but masking them as routine power transfers." The Admiral studied the data in silence for several long moments. This needs to reach the Supreme Commander immediately." "It already has." A new voice cut through the archive chamber. Both Reynolds and Kexity turned to find Vexthor's chief intelligence officer, Commander Zelvac, standing in the shadows. "Dr. Reynolds has been quite busy spreading her theories among our junior officers." Reynolds felt her heart rate spike. "Commander, I was simply attempting to undermine the Supreme Commander's authority with wild speculation." Zelvac's voice carried the cold edge of threatened privilege. "Suggesting that our entire tactical assessment of Earth is flawed. The evidence is right here." Reynolds gestured at the displays. "Their ships are designed to break apart in specific ways during combat. Not from damage, but intentionally. Their modular weapon platforms disguise as primitive vessels." "Enough." Zelvac's tail slammed against the deck. "Dr. Reynolds, you are hereby relieved of your advisory position and reassigned to waste management processing on Deck 47. Admiral Kexty, the Supreme Commander will be very interested to hear why you were entertaining these seditious theories." As security drones moved to escort her away, Reynolds made one final attempt. "You're not seeing their true face. You're seeing what they want you to see. When the attack comes." "When the attack comes," Zelvac cut her off. Earth's insignificant ships will crumble before the might of the Dominion. Guards, remove her." As they led her through the corridors, Reynolds caught a glimpse through one of the observation ports. Earth's star was barely visible at this distance, a tiny point of light among billions. She smiled slightly, remembering an old human saying about the danger of poking sleeping bears. The Zarkax were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Captain Michael Harrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Deception, watching the tactical display as 20 Zarkax warships emerged from faster-than-light travel near Jupiter's orbit. Their massive forms, gleaming with ceremonial markings, made his vessel look like a minnow before a pot of whales. He allowed himself a small smile. "Right on schedule," he muttered, then raised his voice. "All hands, execute Operation Matador. Let's show our guests exactly what they expect to see." The bridge crew responded with knowing grins. Years of preparation had led to this moment. Every member of Earth's defense fleet knew their role in the elaborate dance that was about to unfold. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarah Chen called from her tactical station, "the Zarkax flagship is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're demanding our immediate surrender." "Put it on screen," Harrison ordered, straightening his uniform. Supreme Commander Vexthor's scaled visage filled the main display, his 4 eyes gleaming with anticipated triumph. "Defenders of Earth, witness the might of the Dominion. Your primitive vessels stand no chance against our superior technology. Surrender now, and we will be merciful." Harrison activated his command chair's communication system, making sure to add a slight tremor to his voice. "This is Captain Harrison of the Earth Defense Force. We request time to consult with our leadership." "You have 1 standard hour," Vexthor declared. "After that, we will demonstrate the consequences of defiance." The transmission cut off. Harrison's first officer, Commander James Rodriguez, leaned in close. "Very convincing performance, sir. Think they bought it?" "Oh, they bought it," Harrison grinned. "Lieutenant Chen, signal the fleet. Begin dispersal pattern Delta 9. Make it look good and scared." Across the solar system, Earth's ships began to move. To the Zarkax observers, it appeared to be a panicked scatter, vessels fleeing in seemingly random directions. The Deception itself executed a series of clumsy, evasive maneuvers, its engines sputtering in apparent distress. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Vexthor watched with undisguised contempt. "Look at them flee," he sneered to his bridge crew. "Their ships are even more pathetic in retreat than our scans suggested." In the waste processing section of the massive alien vessel, Dr. Amanda Reynolds watched the tactical display on a stolen datapad. Her lips curved into a knowing smile as she recognized the pattern in Earth's seemingly chaotic movements. The Zarkax saw panic. She saw precision. Back on the Deception, Harrison received confirmation signals from each vessel in the fleet. Every ship was precisely where it needed to be. The Zarkax fleet, eager to press their advantage, had begun pursuing the scattered Earth vessels, spreading their formation exactly as planned. "Sir," Chen reported, "the Zarkax are broadcasting again." Vexthor's image reappeared, his posture radiating absolute confidence. "Your time has expired, humans. Your cowardly retreat has only proven what we already knew." His voice rose to a crescendo, broadcasting across all frequencies. "Earth's ships are insignificant. Their retreat proves their weakness." Harrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The alien commander had delivered the exact phrase they'd been waiting for. "Send the confirmation signal to Solar Command," he ordered quietly. "Lieutenant Chen, prepare to execute Combat Protocol Odysseus." Throughout the solar system, Earth's fleeing vessels suddenly ceased their retreat. The Deception's hull plates began to shift, sections of the ship separating and reconfiguring. Similar transformations occurred across the fleet as humanity's vessels revealed their true nature. "Message from Solar Command," Chen announced, her voice tight with anticipation. "Mercury Defense Grid reports optimal firing solutions achieved. All ships are in position. We are cleared to proceed." Harrison took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Years of preparation, countless hours of practice, and endless attention to detail had led to this precise instant. The Zarkak's fleet had been maneuvered exactly where Earth's defenders wanted them. And they had no idea. "Send battle coordination protocols to all ships," he commanded, his voice steady. "And get me a channel to Supreme Commander Vexthor. I believe it's time we showed him what insignificant really means." Lieutenant Jessica Martinez stood in the command center of Mercury Defense Grid Station Alpha, her eyes fixed on the massive holographic display showing the solar system. From her vantage point beneath Mercury's surface, she watched as the final pieces of humanity's trap fell into place. The Zarkak's fleet, arrogantly pursuing Earth's retreating ships, had positioned themselves perfectly. "All grid stations report ready," her executive officer announced. "Power systems at maximum capacity. Solar collectors are feeding energy directly to the main capacitor banks." Martinez allowed herself a small smile. The Zarkaks hadn't even questioned why humanity had built such extensive solar power facilities on Mercury. They dismissed the massive energy readings as primitive attempts at stellar power collection. Signal from the U.S. Deception. Communications Officer Peter Jung reported. Captain Harrison says, and I quote, "The bull has seen the cape. Time to show him the sword." Martinez nodded, her fingers dancing across the control interface. "Grid control to all units. Light 'em up." Beneath Mercury's scarred surface, thousands of crystalline capacitors began to pulse with stored solar energy. Massive magnetic containment fields shifted, directing the power through channels that the Zarkak sensors had mistaken for simple power conduits. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Commander Vexthor was preparing to deliver another grandiose speech when his sensor officer's panicked voice cut through the command chamber. "My lord, massive energy spike detected from Mercury's surface." "Impossible," Vexthor snarled. "Their facilities, their air." The space between Mercury and the Zarkak's fleet suddenly blazed with light. Hidden emitter arrays, disguised as thermal regulation systems, unveiled their true purpose. Coherent beams of concentrated solar energy, precisely focused through quantum lenses, struck 3 Dominion vessels before their shields could react. The ships didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist, their molecular bonds torn apart by the raw power of a star turned into a weapon. Their debris, reduced to subatomic particles, created brief, brilliant auroras in the void. "By the first egg," Vexthor's tactical officer whispered, "those weren't power collection facilities. The entire planet is a weapon platform." On the Deception, Captain Harrison watched with grim satisfaction as the Zarkak's fleet's perfect formation dissolved into chaos. "Signal the Wolfpack squadrons," he ordered. "Begin Phase 2. From hidden positions in the asteroid belt, ships that the Zarkaks had dismissed as mining vessels revealed their true nature. Mechanical transformation sequences turned industrial equipment into weaponry that had been carefully concealed from alien scans. Martinez watched from Mercury as the trap fully unfurled. "Grid control to all defense platforms. Executing targeting pattern Sigma 3. Captain Harrison, your ships are clear to engage." The Deception's hull plates shifted again, the vessel's supposedly primitive design revealing layers of deception. What had appeared to be structural weaknesses became weapon ports, sections that scans had identified as cargo holds deployed swarms of combat drones. "The humans have deceived us," Vexthor raged as his fleet scattered, desperately trying to avoid the Mercury grid's firing solutions. "Return fire. Show them the true power off." His words cut off as another blast from Mercury sliced through his flagship's supposedly impenetrable shields. The beam missed the core systems, but the message was clear. The next shot wouldn't. "Supreme Commander," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking, "the human vessels. They're not retreating anymore." Indeed, Earth's fleet had begun a coordinated advance. Ships that had seemed vulnerable and primitive now moved with predatory grace, their true capabilities unveiled. The Deception led the charge, its transformed hull bristling with weapons that couldn't exist according to Zarkak's intelligence. In the waste processing section of the dying flagship, Dr. Reynolds watched through a viewport as another energy beam from Mercury lanced past. She keyed in her stolen command codes, broadcasting on the fleet's emergency channel. "This is Dr. Amanda Reynolds to all Zarkak's vessels. I tried to warn you about humanity's capacity for deception. I suggest you retreat while that option remains available. The Mercury grid was just our first surprise." As if emphasizing her words, 2 more Dominion ships vanished in flashes of light, their shields useless against weapons they had dismissed as theoretically impossible. The mighty Zarkak's fleet, which had arrived expecting an easy victory, now faced a choice: retreat in shame or die in ignorance. Vex Thor, his scales pale with rage and fear, made his decision. "All ships, emergency withdrawal. Return tow." Another beam from Mercury cut through his command center, silencing the order. But the surviving ships had seen enough. One by one, they fled into faster-than-light travel, leaving their leader's destroyed flagship as a monument to fatal pride. Martinez watched them go, then keyed her comm. "Grid control to all units. Phase 1 complete. Initiating cooldown sequence." She paused, then added, "And someone get Dr. Reynolds off that wreck. I think she's earned her old job back." Dr. James Walker stood in the asteroid belt's command center Epsilon, surrounded by holographic displays showing the incoming Zarkak's armada, 1/3 of the Dominion's total fleet, over 200 warships, carved through space toward Earth. Their massive dreadnoughts, each 1 kilometer long, bristled with weapons that had subjugated hundreds of alien civilizations. "They still think quantity is quality," Walker mused, adjusting his neural interface headset. "Network, initiate Wolfpack protocol." Throughout the asteroid belt, thousands of dormant units awakened. The Zarkaks had scanned these rocks countless times, dismissing the energy signatures as natural radioactive decay. They never considered that humans would hide their most advanced weapons inside ordinary space debris. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected," announced Commander Emily Chen. "They're attempting to flank our positions using their standard battle doctrine." Walker nodded, unsurprised. "Predictable. Just like the simulations. Execute defense pattern chimera." The U.S. Deception and its battle group accelerated from their hiding spots within the larger asteroids. Captain Harrison's voice crackled over the command channel. "All ships, initiate combat transformation sequences. Dr. Walker, your Wolfpacks have the lead." Inside the rocky camouflage of the asteroid belt, Walker's life work revealed itself. Swarms of autonomous hunter-killer drones, each carrying a payload of antimatter, emerged from their hidden nests. Unlike traditional drones, these units operated on revolutionary quantum processors that the Zarkaks had deemed impossible. "First wave of dreadnoughts entering optimal engagement range," Chen reported. "They're charging their main weapons." "Let them fire first," Walker instructed, his fingers dancing across neural interface controls. "Let's see how their targeting systems handle our latest surprise." The Zarkak's fleet launched a devastating barrage, enough firepower to crack a small moon. But the human ships weren't where their targeting systems indicated. The vessels that appeared to be fleeing were actually holographic projections, another technology the Dominion had dismissed as theoretical. "Wolfpack groups 1 through 7, engage at will," Walker commanded. "Show them why we named you after Earth's apex predators." The drone swarms struck with devastating precision. Their small size and quantum-enhanced maneuverability made them nearly impossible to track. Each carried a minute amount of antimatter, not enough to be detected at range, but devastating when detonated against a capital ship's hull. Aboard the new Zarkak's flagship, the Unyielding Dominance, Admiral Kexvor watched in horror as his brother Vex Thor's tactics failed spectacularly. "Impossible. Their drones are penetrating our finest shields." "Sir," his science officer reported, "the human vessels are splitting apart." Indeed, the Earth ships were undergoing their final transformation. What the Zarkax had believed to be structural weaknesses were actually carefully designed separation points. Each small vessel split into 3 independent fighting units, their modular design allowing for unprecedented tactical flexibility. Dr. Reynolds was right, Kex-4 whispered, watching another dreadnought disappear in a matter of antimatter cascade. We never saw their true capabilities. Walker directed his wolf packs with the precision of a symphony conductor, each swarm moving in perfect coordination with the transformed Earth fleet. The massive Zarkax vessels, designed for traditional space combat, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to play by the established rules of warfare. "Sir," Chen's voice carried a note of triumph. "The enemy fleet is attempting to regroup. They're falling back to defensive formations. Classic Zarkax response to an unexpected threat." Walker noted, "Captain Harrison, are your groups in position?" "Ready and waiting," Harrison responded. "The Mercury grid is fully recharged as well. They're about to learn why humanity specialized in ambush predation." The Zarkax fleet, still trying to establish a defensive perimeter, failed to notice that their retreat had been carefully orchestrated. The wolf packs had herded them directly into the kill zone of both the transformed Earth ships and the Mercury grid's firing solutions. Walker allowed himself a small smile as he initiated the final attack sequence. "All units, execute Operation Checkmate. Let's show the Dominion why Earth's insignificant ships are about to cost them a third of their fleet." The space around the asteroid belt erupted in apocalyptic fury as humanity's full arsenal was unleashed. The mighty Zarkax Armada, pride of the Dominion, learned too late that size means nothing when your enemy rewrites the rules of engagement. Colonel Sarah Mitchell watched the neural interface readings scroll across her augmented vision as she guided her vessel, the U.S. Interceptor, through a series of maneuvers that would have killed an unmodified human pilot. The ship responded to her thoughts with microsecond precision, its synthetic intelligence working in perfect harmony with her enhanced consciousness. Status report on the Zarkax adaptation attempts. She subvocalized, the ship's systems translating her neural impulses into commands. "They're trying to match our maneuverability profiles," her second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander David Chen, reported through the neural link. "Their organic pilots are experiencing extreme physical stress. 3 enemy vessels have already lost consciousness during high G turns." Mitchell allowed herself a grim smile. The Zarkax had always prided themselves on their natural advantages: better reflexes, stronger bodies, more resilient nervous systems. But they had never considered that humanity would find a way to transcend organic limitations entirely. "Show me tactical overlay Delta," she commanded. The battlefield materialized in her mind's eye, rendered in perfect clarity by the neural interface. The remaining Zarkax ships were attempting to form a new battle strategy, their movements suggesting growing desperation. Dr. Reynolds' voice cut through the tactical channel. "Colonel Mitchell, the Dominion's command structure is in chaos. They've never encountered pilots who could endure these stress levels. Their entire combat doctrine is based on the assumption that organic limitations would prevent these kinds of maneuvers." "That was their first mistake," Mitchell responded, directing her ship through a corkscrew maneuver that brought her within point-blank range of a Zarkax cruiser. "They assumed we would play by their rules of biology." The Interceptor's weapon systems, guided by the merged consciousness of human and machine, struck with impossible precision. Quantum-tipped projectiles phased through the enemy's shields, their existence another theoretical impossibility that humanity had turned into reality. Aboard the unyielding Dominance, Admiral Kex-4 watched in growing horror as his fleet's tactical advantages evaporated. How are they doing this? No organic pilot could survive these maneuvers. His tactical officer, scales pale with stress, manipulated the sensor displays. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy patterns from their neural systems. It's as if their brains are interfacing directly with their ship's computers." "Impossible," Kex-4 whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. The human vessels moved with a fluidity that defied natural law, their reactions faster than synaptic transmission should allow. Mitchell's voice broadcast across all frequencies. "This is Colonel Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Defense Force. Your assumptions about human limitations have cost you dearly. We are not bound by the same constraints as other species you've encountered." As if to demonstrate her point, the interceptor split into its combat components, each section moving with perfect coordination. The neural network allowed Mitchell to control all 3 units simultaneously, her enhanced consciousness processing input and output at speeds that would drive an unmodified mind insane. "The human brain has incredible potential for adaptation," she continued, her ships dancing through the debris of fallen Zarkax vessels. "While you focused on building bigger ships, we focused on transcending our own limitations. Every human vessel in this fleet is piloted by a consciousness that exists in perfect synthesis with artificial intelligence." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Dominion fleet. Their entire strategic doctrine, based on overwhelming force and biological superiority, crumbled in the face of an enemy that had rewritten the rules of what was possible. "All Earth Defense Force units," Mitchell commanded through the neural network, "execute Victory Protocol Omega. Show them exactly why size doesn't matter when you've evolved beyond traditional combat paradigms." The space around the Zarkax fleet erupted in a display of coordinated warfare unlike anything they had ever encountered. Human ships moved in perfect harmony, their enhanced pilots operating on a level that made traditional space combat obsolete. Quantum weapons, neural interfaces, and synthetic intelligence merged to create a symphony of destruction that no amount of brute force could counter. "Your ships aren't insignificant," Admiral Kexvor transmitted on an open channel, his voice heavy with realization. "They're the future we were too proud to see coming." Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood in the grand chamber of the Zarkax Central Colony, her environmental suit now bearing the markings of a senior advisor. The gathered representatives from 30 colonial worlds watched in stunned silence as she presented the tactical analysis of their fleet's devastation. "The facts are undeniable," she stated, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. "Supreme Commander Vexthor's pride and ignorance have cost the Dominion nearly half its military strength. But more importantly, they've exposed a fatal flaw in your entire civilization's approach to warfare and technological development." Behind her, holographic displays showed the systematic destruction of the Dominion's finest ships. The colonial representatives, many of whom had never seen their mighty fleet defeated, shifted uncomfortably in their ceremonial seats. Major Thomas Anderson, commanding Earth's diplomatic corps, stepped forward. "We're broadcasting this same presentation across every Dominion world. Your people deserve to know how their leadership's arrogance led to this catastrophe." In the Centauri colony, crowds gathered in public squares watched Earth's ships dance through impossible maneuvers. On Proxima's industrial worlds, factory workers saw their mighty dreadnoughts reduced to atoms by weapons they'd been told couldn't exist. Throughout the Dominion, centuries of propaganda about military invincibility crumbled in the face of undeniable evidence. "The Dominion's military doctrine is based on overwhelming force," Reynolds continued, highlighting tactical displays. "But Earth's forces prove that adaptation and innovation trump raw power. While your leaders focused on building bigger ships, humanity focused on transcending traditional limitations." Administrator Kexhall of the Outer Colonies rose from his seat, his scales shifting colors in agitation. "You speak of our failures, human, but what of the colonies that depend on the Dominion's protection? Without our fleet—" "Your fleet," Anderson interrupted, "was never about protection. It was about control. Earth is offering an alternative." The chamber erupted in chittering discussions as Reynolds brought up new tactical displays. Already, 17 colony worlds have declared independence from the Dominion. They've seen what Earth's insignificant ships can do. More importantly, they've seen how our defensive doctrine can be adapted to protect smaller territories more effectively than massive dreadnoughts. On the Dominion throne world, riots had broken out in the capital. The ruling council, faced with unprecedented military defeat and colonial rebellion, struggled to maintain control. Centuries of carefully maintained hierarchy collapsed as colony after colony rejected their authority. "This isn't just about military defeat," Reynolds explained, her voice carrying the weight of vindication. "This is about the failure of an entire philosophy. The Dominion believed that bigger meant better, that overwhelming force guaranteed victory. Earth proved that innovation, adaptation, and understanding one's true capabilities matter more than size." Anderson stepped forward again, activating a new holographic display. "We're offering partnership, not subjugation. Earth's defensive technologies can be adapted to protect independent worlds. Our neural interface systems can be modified for your species. We're willing to share knowledge, not hoard it." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Centuries of Dominion doctrine had taught them that power flowed from the strong to the weak. The idea of mutual cooperation, of shared advancement, represented a fundamental shift in their worldview. "Your choice is simple," Reynolds concluded, looking around the chamber. "Continue clinging to failed philosophies about power and superiority, or embrace a new way of thinking. Earth's victory proved that the old ways don't work anymore." Across the Dominion's territory, the message resonated. Colonial governments, long suppressed by central authority, saw an opportunity for genuine independence. Military officers, impressed by Earth's technological innovations, began questioning traditional doctrine. The thousand-year hierarchy, built on the assumption of technological and tactical superiority, crumbled in weeks. In her private quarters later, Reynolds reviewed the latest reports. 23 colonies had now declared independence. The Dominion's remaining fleet, scattered and demoralized, offered no resistance. A new order was emerging from the ashes of Vexthor's pride. "Report from Earth Defense Command," her computer announced. "Admiral Cooper requests your presence for the final phase of operations. The Dominion's central government has requested terms for surrender." Reynolds smiled, remembering Vexthor's dismissive sneers. The mighty Dominion, undone not by superior force, but by their own inability to recognize that true strength comes in many forms. Their insignificant opponent had rewritten the rules of galactic power. Admiral Rachel Cooper stood in the shattered remains of the Dominion's central command chamber, her dress uniform a stark contrast to the destruction around her. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the U.S. Deception holding position alongside several former Dominion vessels, their newly painted markings indicating their allegiance to independent worlds. "Quite a different view from the last time I stood here," Dr. Amanda Reynolds remarked, now wearing the formal robes of the Transitional Council's head. "Amazing how quickly things change when centuries of assumptions crumble." Cooper nodded, examining the damage from the Mercury grid's final shot, the one that had ended Vexthor's reign. "Hard to believe it was only 3 months ago that they dismissed our ships as insignificant." The chamber's doors slid open, admitting Captain Michael Harrison and Colonel Sarah Mitchell. Behind them came representatives from 27 newly independent worlds, their scales showing the varied colors of their different colonies. Last to enter was Admiral Kexfor, former commander of the Dominion fleet, now serving as the voice of the old guard in the new order. "The surrender documents are prepared," Harrison reported, placing a data crystal on the central podium. "All remaining Dominion military forces have stood down. The colony worlds are establishing their own defense forces, with Earth's assistance." Reynolds stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of her new position. "The Transitional Council has ratified the cooperative defense treaties. Each world will maintain its own sovereignty while contributing to a mutual protection network." "And the neural interface technology?" Kexfor asked, his voice carrying a hint of his species' former pride. "Your advantage over us." Colonel Mitchell smiled, activating a holographic display, already being adapted for Zarkak's physiology. "Your pilots begin training next week. Turns out your natural reflexes, combined with our interface technology, produce remarkable results." The display showed test footage of Zarkak's pilots learning to operate the new hybrid vessels. Their natural abilities, enhanced by human innovation, achieve performance levels that neither species could manage alone. "We're not here to replace your civilization," Cooper stated firmly. "We're here to help it evolve. Your people built remarkable things, but you stopped innovating. You chose intimidation over adaptation. A mistake we won't repeat," Kex4 acknowledged, his scales shifting in what humans now recognized as humility. "Though I admit, it's strange to see our mighty dreadnoughts being decommissioned." Harrison gestured to the display, showing the transformation of a former Dominion warship. "Not decommissioned, reimagined. Your ships are being retrofitted with modular systems, smaller, more adaptable combat units that can respond quickly to emerging threats. Size isn't everything, after all." The gathered representatives watched as the display showed the new combined fleet in action. Former Dominion vessels, now sleek and transformed, operated alongside Earth ships in perfect coordination. The neural interface technology allowed crews from both species to work in seamless harmony. "The Mercury grid has been reconfigured," Mitchell reported. "Its defensive coverage now extends to all participating worlds. No single power can control it. It requires consensus from the Council to activate." Reynolds smiled at the symbolism. The weapon that had broken the Dominion's pride now served as the foundation of a new defensive alliance. "We've established training centers on 6 colony worlds," she added. "Your people are quick learners. The first joint human Zarkax crews begin operations next month." "And what of the other spacefaring races?" one of the colonial representatives asked. "The ones who feared the Dominion's power." "Already reaching out," Cooper replied. "Turns out, when you stop trying to dominate everyone, diplomatic relations improve dramatically. 3 new species have applied for membership in the Defensive Alliance." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The mighty Dominion, which had ruled through force and fear, was transforming into something entirely new. Earth's insignificant ships had not just won a war, they had sparked a revolution in how civilizations viewed power and cooperation. "The future's going to be interesting," Harrison mused, watching as another converted Dominion vessel took its place in the combined fleet. "Though I suspect no one will be underestimating Earth's ships again." "No," Reynolds agreed, remembering her days in waste processing. "But more importantly, no one will be assuming that size and strength are the same thing. Sometimes the smallest ships carry the biggest changes." As the sun rose over the former Dominion capital, casting long shadows through the chamber, the gathered leaders began signing the documents that would formalize their new alliance. Earth's victory had not led to a new empire, but to something far more valuable. A future where innovation and cooperation replaced domination and fear. The age of the mighty dreadnought was over. The era of adaptation and partnership had begun.